In this next lesson, let's try to put it all together into a post-process visual effect volume that will have something like diving into some water. And we'll combo this in the next section where we deal with physics, where we'll create a secondary physics volume that will make it more like something we can swim in. All right, great. So we'll create a post-process volume. We'll drag it in. Now, I'm going to leave these outlines on because I want you to see that they are not affected by the warping that we're going to do. But we've created a post-process volume. Let's close all of these and just go through them one at a time and add different effects that are similar to what we've been doing throughout this course. Okay, so let's go in here. So let's start out in the lens. We can add a little bloom. We'll turn the intensity up to something like 3. And then let's also go in and add a little lens flare. Could turn on the lens flare a little bit, just subtly. You can also add some depth of field. So under depth of field, we'll have our focal distance set to something like 30, but in order for depth of field to turn on, we're going to also turn on the aperture. So the aperture, we'll keep it to like 1.2. So there, now it's really blurring. And also when you jump in a pool, sometimes the color shifts, especially if the pool around you is sort of blue. So we could do some color grading. So we could do just a global shift towards blue. And we'll just dial that up. We can really intensify it. There we go. Now it's really blue. All right. Now this is looking pretty good, but I also want to warp everything around me as if the water is warping around me. So we can do another post-process material. So we'll go down and get that ready under post-process rendering features, post-process materials, create a node here, and then I will just right click, create a new material. We'll call this ppm water warp 2. Okay, so here's water warp 2. So double click and open this up. Remember, the first step is to turn this into a post-process material, otherwise we won't be able to plug that in. And then some of the same nodes that we used in the last one, we'll create a scene texture. And the scene texture we're going to use is post-process input 0. So there we got that. We can start plugging this in. And we're going to use some of the nodes that we used in the last section where we talked about materials. Previously we used a rotator to create subtle animation. In this one, we're going to use a panner. And so we can right click and create a panner. And the panner is going to move the UVs across the scene. And we can use a texture coordinate index. So if you hit U and click, we can just plug that into the coordinates. Probably could just leave it the way it is. So in the panner, we're going to need some sort of speed element. So we can keep it pretty slow. We can do something like 0.005, or we'll give that a try. And we're going to want to pan some texture. And the texture we're going to want is a normal map. So I'm going to hold down T and click. And we'll plug that into the UVs. And there's a texture we're going to want to choose. We could either pick it here or go to the content browser. In the starter content, under the textures folder, there's a water underscore n. So take that, so T underscore water n. We'll plug that into the texture sample. And then we just want to mask out, because we only want to warp. This is made for warping the R, G, and the B. That's what a normal map does. But in this case, we just want to warp the X and the Y coordinates. And so we're going to just use a coordinate mask to mask out just getting 2 of these inputs. And then we can also specify how much we're going to warp it. And so we can do that by a scalar parameter, and we'll call this like warp strength. And we can set that to some value, some small value. We'll call 0.1. We might want to go lower. And we'll combine this by multiplying, holding down M and clicking. And we can also add this together, holding down A and clicking. And we're also, I think we want one more set of texture coordinates in order to add that all together. Yeah, that works. Now, if you wanted to have more control over how it was warping with the texture coordinates, you could use the same setup that we did in the past, where we set up scalar nodes for U and V. But to keep things speedy, we'll just, with the append and the multiply, I'll do it for 1. Why not? Take this, little append, connect these together, and we'll multiply this. And we're going to want to set the default value of these. There we go. Great. We could also set a variable out here for speed. Great. We had set a speed of 0.005. 0.05. All right. Excellent. Let's hit apply and let's plug it in and wrap this up. So we're going to choose this under asset preference. We're going to choose water. And it was a post-process water warp 2. Plugged it in, and there we are. We are warping. Now we could create a material instance and start playing with the speed of the water warp or the intensity. But this is really great. It's a great place to stop for now. Let's step out of the water, back into the water. You can see that the post-process outline doesn't warp. So that's something. Excellent. All right. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next lesson.